So this is part 9 on how the hell did I get myself into this. I had no time to do any of the night study, so I was just trying to get as many practical hours as I could. We found a helicopter reasonably quick, it was up in Whistler, British Columbia, which is the ski resort. They were actually selling their last 206 Jet Ranger and moving to the A-Stars. Not that that matters, it's just helicopter talk. So that would have been about 6 weeks between that, and by the time that we found this helicopter and had the paperwork to purchase it, the chopper came in, I believe at the time, about 675,000 Canadian dollars. So not a small purchase, but by then everything started moving really, really quickly. And I actually finished doing construction work because I couldn't physically do everything. I've still had my properties. I still really enjoyed bartending. It was my social life, as well as I made a great money out of it, and I didn't understand what I was getting myself into totally. But that's what I did, is I quit that. And then when we purchased the 206, or just before, I remember going out to my school and they had a 206 there, and said, hey, can I switch my lesson today? I want to learn how to fly the 206. It was a lot more expensive at the time. It was about $1,000 an hour to learn in that one. And I would say that total time in that would have been 2, maybe 3 hours doing flying in the Jet Ranger. And you had to learn the startups sequence of a 206 Jet Ranger, which, you know, when you're talking about somebody coming from bartending, construction, and then, you know, you would normally go through 40, 50 hours of normal flying before you switched over to a jet endorsement. I'm talking about under 10 hours, and I'm talking about under 10 hours in the normal helicopter, and then to switch to the jet under 5 before I took possession of the helicopter that we then bought. So let me tell you about the pickup of that. So the helicopter was bought, and I remember I went up to go see if all the paperwork was done. I had no intention of flying it, and what I was going to actually do is I was going to try and get a friend of mine that I knew how to fly it, or a friend that I'd met actually at the flying school. I was going to get him to come over from Alberta to fly it, because I did not have the confidence that I thought I need. Like, everything started really happening, and when reality hits you in the face, it's quite daunting. That day, when I rolled up to get not to get the helicopter, just to check on the helicopter, I had a friend with me in the car, and they said that the helicopter's all ready to be picked up. The boxes and boxes of paperwork were in the cargo hold and on the back seat. So basically, they were just going to hand me the keys, and there was no reason for me not to pick the helicopter up. It's one of those moments in time that I just went, you've got to be kidding me. And I tried to just fake it till you make it. I put on my game face and said, yep, no worries at all. I'll just go out and grab a few things. And I went out to the car, and I said to the friend I was with that they want me to pick this thing up. And he said, well, you can't not. I mean, you've told them all along that you're a helicopter pilot. And even when I went and seen it before we'd actually purchased it, I talked like I was a big time helicopter pilot. So I just, over the next few minutes, talked myself into, you can do this, Tim, you can do this, you can do this. So I walked back in, and they said that they'd pushed it out to where I needed to take off from, and I had a backpack with me, and the only reason I grabbed the backpack is I'd always seen pilots carrying shit, and I just thought I might as well just look like I'm carrying something. And I threw that thing in the back seat of the chopper and I climbed aboard. I had most pretty done, I would say, somewhere between 5 and 10 jet starts, which is starting a jet helicopter. And there's a whole process behind not actually blowing the engine up. And even when you're getting instructions, the instructor keeps their hands on your hands, because if you pull your finger off that start button, you will blow a $250,000 engine up in a second, because everything happens so quickly when you're starting a jet engine up. You hear that tick, 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 tick. That's the starter going, and you can hear the wind up of the engine. That works sheerly on battery power, and what it's actually doing is when you've got your finger on the starter, it's blowing air through it to cool it down, because the minute it gets enough volts in it and it starts to wind up at a certain, and look, it's been years since I've flown a Jet Ranger, so I don't remember all the sequences to it. When you roll that fuel on and you hear that ticking and that explosion in what's called the can, that's when you hear it fire up. And the temperature goes from 0 to like 900 degrees in a matter of 2 seconds. And it can only stay in that red for about a second and a half before you've got to roll the fuel off and keep your finger on the button. Otherwise you will pop the engine. So all of this is happening in my head. So I just went through what I could remember of the start sequences. Normally you've got a cheat sheet with you and you go through each thing and then you tap it. I didn't have the cheat sheet. I just went through what I could remember, went through the whole startup procedure, checked whether everything's back. You run your fingers back like this. There's fuses and everything up there. And I decided to fire it up. So I went down, pushed the button to start the helicopter and rolled the fuel on, saw it winding up, rolled the fuel on, it started. And if I can tell you how much I was shaking when that thing started, it was one of the scariest, well, at that time, one of the scariest moments of my life. I've had a lot more after that, but helicopter fired up and we were in business. What I didn't understand about aircraft is it's a very sentimental thing when they sell an aircraft, much like a boat. Everyone wants to come out and see this take off. And I thought to myself, holy shit, I'm going to chop the heads off anyone within 50 feet of this thing, because they look very, very close. And I already had enough pressure that I had never flown solo in my life. Now understand, I've talked about this previously on a video, that when you fly solo, it's a very momentous day that you do. You've been training for weeks for this, not weeks, for months. Your instructor is testing you that morning, because now that I have seen it, that you're doing circuits, you're doing emergency landing, you're just going through everything you possibly imagine. And then on one of these touch and goes, your instructor will get out and then they'll give you the go ahead to take off, because it's such a big, intense moment that they want to tick off everything, that you're not going to kill, you're not going to have a problem. And so that didn't happen with me. I just had to do it all on my own, and it was terrifying. And I thought there's one way I could possibly hit this hangar, I could hit these people, I could trip, it could go sideways. But anyway, I pulled up on the collective, pulled back and got centered a little bit. The skids of the helicopter lifted up. And if I can say, that was most probably the best takeoff I'd had ever done. And if I don't mind myself saying, the best one I've seen in a while. Helicopter sits a little heavy to the right, and as it sort of crept into the air, One skid hung low and I just gently lifted off. Absolutely first class takeoff. I was still shaking. I backed the helicopter out and sort of done a corkscrew and then flew out, and I just started spiraling up to get a bit of height. I was shaking incredibly, could not believe what I was doing. And then I just sort of better double check that I've done everything. I looked around and started tapping the gauges until I got down to the bottom right hand side and seen the fuel gauge. No fuel. I couldn't believe it. My heart sank as I looked up, and both fuel pumps, I hadn't turned the fuel pumps on. I checked everything else but these two switches. I flicked them on and bang, the fuel bounced back up and my heart literally stopped. Stay tuned.